It's the 29th of May, 2021, and fans of Paraguayan team Deportivo Capiata are watching on in disbelief as a brand new player steps up to take a crucial penalty. They barely know who their new number 10 is yet, but in his short time at the club, he's made quite the impression. Arriving in a silver Lamborghini and decked out in gold jewelry, he looked more like a Premier League star than a Paraguayan second division player. But despite all the swagger, the mystery man steps up to take the penalty and blazes it 10 feet over the bar to the shock of the fans watching. Who the hell is this guy was the prevailing question for those in attendance, but they had no idea just how shocking the answer to that question really was, because their brand new number 10 was living a sinister double life, a mediocre footballer by day and one of South America's most wanted drug lords by night. His name? Sebastián Marset. And instead of lying low from Interpol and the South American authorities hunting him, Sebastián Marset was brazenly using his cocaine millions to live out his childhood dream of playing professional football, with the added bonus of laundering his dirty money along the way. But Sebastián Marset's story doesn't end in Paraguay, and it comes with dramatic twists and turns, including hitmen, narrow escapes, international manhunts, money laundering, and a cartel kingpin who just couldn't walk away from football no matter how dangerous it was to his freedom. This video tells the unbelievable true story of Sebastián Marset, the international drug lord who is hopelessly addicted to playing football. The story of Sebastián Marset began in the outskirts of Montevideo in Uruguay in Piedras Blancas, a tough neighborhood for what was one of South America's most peaceful countries at the time. The young Sebastián Marset had the same dream of every young South American boy, becoming a professional footballer. He and his friends played all day every day in the streets with makeshift goals and counterfeit football shirts, with Marset's shirt of choice a knockoff David Beckham shirt, his idol. Marset was a good student, but academics were never the way that he envisioned dragging himself out of poverty, instead viewing football as his one and only ticket to fame and fortune. But there was one major problem standing in the way of Marset's dream. He just wasn't very good at football. He lacked pace, his first touch was clumsy, and his passing was downright awful. Still, after finishing high school, he chased the dream anyway, but the top level was never within reach for him, and he found himself stuck playing in the lower leagues in Montevideo, light years away from the fame and riches he had envisioned for himself. At the age of 18, with his dream starting to slip away, Marset would begin his pivot into the criminal underworld, getting arrested multiple times for petty offenses like handling stolen goods and possession of narcotics. But while he'd never been able to rise through the ranks of football, his climb in the criminal underworld was a lot smoother. Just 4 years into his new career, he was trusted with receiving a drug shipment to be delivered via plane. Unfortunately for Marset, the police had been tipped off and they swooped in to arrest him, but Marset was completely unfazed, telling the officers that he was a professional footballer and calmly surrendering. His calm, almost smug composure unsettled the police, with one officer telling a colleague, "This guy is going to be a major problem for us one day," and he had no idea just how right Marset would prove him to be. Convicted of drug trafficking, Marset spent the next 5 years of his life behind bars, a far cry from the footballer lifestyle he dreamed of as a kid. But his time behind bars wasn't wasted time. Inside, Marset significantly expanded his criminal network, forging ties with the Italian mafia and Brazil's infamous PCC prison gang, valuable connections that would help strap a rocket to his criminal operations once he got out. Yet even as he plotted his rise through the underworld, football never left him. On the prison yard, Marset organized fierce matches every day, and the game was never far from his mind. When 2018 arrived and Sebastián Marset was released from prison, he carried with him two things: a powerful new network of cartel connections and his unwavering desire to achieve the football stardom that had eluded him, and he would stop at nothing to take what he felt was rightfully his. Freed at the age of 27, Sebastián Marset wasted no time climbing the ranks of organized crime. Armed with a fake Bolivian passport and a new identity, he quietly slipped into Paraguay, and within months, he began laying the foundations of a cocaine empire. Operating in the shadows, Marset was able to scale dramatically fast, and just a few years after his release, he was already flooding Europe with cocaine shipments from ports in Paraguay and Uruguay. Each brick was stamped with 3 bold letters, PCU, standing for Primer Cartel Uruguayo, the name of his burgeoning cartel. At the scale Marset was operating, remaining invisible was never going to last. Soon, investigators began picking up the whispers of a heavily tattooed Uruguayan rising through the ranks of the drug trade. But even as millions flowed in from cocaine shipments, football was never far from Marset's mind. He branded his shipments with names like Maradona and Manchester, in a nod to the sport that still dominated his imagination even as he ruled a criminal empire. The scale of Marset's rise was staggering. In just 4 years since his release from prison, investigators estimated that he had raked in over $1 billion from drug trafficking by the age of 31. This level of success earned him the nickname El Rey del Sur, the King of the South. And like any king, he didn't take threats to his reign lightly, with texts recovered by police showing Marset bragging about shootings and giving his underlings advice on disposing of dead bodies. The extent of Marset's reach and violence was monumental, with Marset accused by Colombian prosecutors of orchestrating the assassination of Paraguayan anti-mafia prosecutor Marcelo Pecci, who was gunned down on his honeymoon all the way over in Colombia, in a hit that shocked Latin America. But when Marset's mind wasn't laser focused on business and killing his enemies, it always wandered to the same familiar place, the football field. And now, with more money than he knew what to do with, Marset decided to begin plotting his road back into the game. The relationship between the beautiful game and cartel drug money has been long established in Latin America, with the notorious Pablo Escobar bankrolling Medellin's Atlético Nacional all the way to a prestigious Copa Libertadores title, Colombia's first ever. And Escobar was far from the only narco king pumping his illicit gains into football. But Marset's ambition was slightly different to the kingpins who had come before him. Marset didn't just want to silently fund or own a team while hiding in the shadows. He wanted to live out his boyhood dream and play on the team. In early 2021, Marset set his footballing plans into motion in the country that he'd made his home, Paraguay. You'd think a wanted drug lord armed with a fake passport and responsible for trafficking tons of cocaine might try to keep a low profile, but not Marset. He made his introduction to football in typical fashion, by pulling up to his chosen team stadium in a silver Lamborghini and spinning donuts outside the entrance before exiting the car draped in expensive jewelry. His club of choice, Deportivo Capiata, were languishing in Paraguay's second division and battling ongoing financial difficulties. But their financial troubles vanished overnight when they struck a deal with Sebastián Marset. Though the exact terms were obviously never revealed, it was understood that Marset would inject substantial funds into the club in exchange for being allowed to play on the team, without seeking any ownership stake in return for his investment. Immediately after striking their agreement with Marset, the money began to flood into the club, with new changing rooms, new medical equipment, new TVs, and improved cafeteria food, just some of the improvements that Marset funded. Beyond infrastructure improvements, Marset also lavished his teammates with financial incentives of thousands of dollars in exchange for winning games. One teammate even received $10,000 for allowing Marset to take his shirt number of 10. Game-changing money for footballers stuck in the Paraguayan second tier, but absolutely nothing for a man who was printing money through criminality. Unfortunately for his teammates, their chance of earning those win bonuses was significantly hampered by Marset's performances, with his wayward passing and lack of pace ruthlessly exploited by his opponents. Eventually, Capiata's manager Jorge Nunes had enough, and he tried to bench their new number 10. But in a bizarre turn of events, his players revolted and demanded that Marset be allowed to play, a sign of the loyalty that Marset's bonuses and parties had brought him from his teammates. With a mutiny on his hand, the coach backed down and accepted that he was stuck with Marset in his starting lineup. And so the farce continued. Marset strutted around in his number 10 shirt, playing the part of a creative playmaker, but struggling to do even the most basic functions of a footballer. He did, however, excel at one thing: dangerous tackles, but referees never showed him a card as they were too afraid of his reputation. Despite the losses piling up, Marset was absolutely loving life. He brought his wife and kids to watch as he lived out his boyhood fantasy in full view. And while the club surely knew who he really was, given his outrageous wealth and willingness to spend, they happily looked the other way, with Marset's name appearing openly on team sheets. He wasn't hiding, and for now, he didn't really need to. But even as Marset enjoyed his surreal stint playing professional football, there was always a sense that his fairy tale could not last. There was only so long that a narco drug lord could simultaneously avoid the attention of the Paraguayan authorities while also flaunting his ridiculous wealth and playing football for all to see. Weeks after Marset missed his crucial penalty, word came through. Paraguay's anti-narcotics police had him squarely in their sights, and they had been quietly assembling a case for months, codenamed Operation at All Costs, with the goal of dismantling the elusive leadership of the PCU cartel. But for all of their investigative efforts, they still didn't know the real identity of the man at the top of the PCU. But that finally changed when a tip-off alerted officials that their target would be boarding a private jet at an airport in Asunción. When authorities inspected the Bolivian passport that the man was traveling with, they finally had their name: Sebastián Marset. But surprisingly, they had no idea who that was. Such was the job that Marset had done in staying off of their radar. The first thing investigators did was Google the name, with their search returning only results related to Marset's football career with Deportivo Capiata. The police were in disbelief that the elusive criminal mastermind they'd been looking for all this time was in fact a failed footballer who had been openly playing under his real name the whole time right in front of them. But if they thought catching Marset would be easy now that they'd uncovered his identity, they were sorely mistaken. The tip-off of the investigation had allowed Marset to remain a step ahead of them, and he quietly vanished overnight without a trace. His name simply disappeared from the squad of Deportivo Capiata, and teammates arrived to find his locker emptied out, never hearing from him again. Marset was now on the run, and his days of living openly in Paraguay were over. But hiding in the shadows wasn't really his style. Despite the mounting risks and growing pressure from law enforcement, he wasn't ready to give up on his obsession. Instead, he began plotting his return, not just to freedom, but back onto the pitch, as football still had a firm hold on him, and he wasn't done chasing the dream just yet. Knowing he was a marked man in Paraguay, Marset quietly slipped across the border and left the country, losing the trail of the investigators desperately trying to catch him. While many of his associates were wrapped up and indicted on drug charges, Marset opted to leave South America entirely. But this move didn't mean he intended to lay low. Far from it. Marset was still fully intending on making his way back to the football field. He set up base in Dubai and identified a struggling Greek team, Trikala FC, as the perfect next chapter. It was a club with a shady past, drug-related convictions, mafia-linked ownership, and even a former president gunned down in a gangland hit. A perfect fit for a man like Marset. Marset dispatched 4 players and a coach over to Trikala and entered discussions around buying the club. The players, who had links to Marset through another Paraguayan second division team that he'd flirted with, had been offered $200,000 in cash for agreeing to be transferred to the obscure Greek team. Once again, money began to get pumped into the club, with staff paid in cash by their new Paraguayan hombres, and with their loyalty bought, Marset began making his arrangements to join the team in Greece. But then the plan unraveled. Authorities in Dubai stopped Marset from boarding his flight to Greece and arrested him on the spot for using a fake Paraguayan passport. This should have been the end for Marset. With Paraguay pressing for extradition and the United States involved, it looked like justice had finally caught up to him after his narrow escape from Paraguay. Stuck in a jail cell in the desert and with investigators desperately trying to get him deported to South America, it seemed like a situation that even Marset couldn't get himself out of. But he got to work with a smuggled phone and a plan to free himself. His first order of business was ordering the killing of the man who'd supplied him the fake passport that had failed, an act that was promptly carried out by his associates. Next on the agenda was working every possible angle and connection he had to get himself out of a UAE jail cell without being forced back on a plane to Paraguay. Marset had used money to solve the issue of not being good enough to play professional football, and he threw money at this issue, achieving shocking levels of success. Despite being wanted in Paraguay for trafficking obscene amounts of drugs, the Paraguayan arrest warrant that would have facilitated his deportation from Dubai was mysteriously delayed, despite authorities being fully aware that he was being held in the UAE. With no arrest warrant from Paraguay forthcoming, Marset was able to get the help of Uruguayan diplomats and apply for a new Uruguayan passport while behind bars. Unbelievably, the Uruguayan government went ahead and issued this new passport, and with his new legitimate passport in hand, Marset successfully convinced the Emirati authorities to let him walk out of the jail as a free man. As soon as the gates opened, Marset disappeared into the night and fled the UAE for good. This chain of events understandably generated considerable anger in South America, with the corruption at play from both the Uruguayan and Paraguayan authorities quite obvious. The backlash even reached Uruguay's president, who defended the decision to issue the passport as following the law, but both the foreign minister and interior minister of Uruguay would resign in the fallout. Having pulled off a miraculous escape, Marset couldn't resist the temptation of rubbing the police's nose in it, and he would send voice notes and videos to Uruguayan journalists via WhatsApp, telling them that he was too smart and too far away to ever be brought to justice, while proclaiming he was innocent of the charges being brought against him. But surely, after somehow evading justice not once but twice, Marset would lay low, right? And he definitely wouldn't decide to bribe his way back into professional football, right? After his Dubai escape, Marset predictably fell off the radar. He'd sent his WhatsApp video taunts from a South African number, but few believed that he would still be there. So where was he? Well, rumors began to surface of his location, and even for Marset, this move was a brazen one. Far from hiding away in a clandestine bunker on a completely different continent, Marset was back in South America, living in Bolivia's biggest city, Santa Cruz. And not only was he back, he was again playing professional football. Marset, a man who had run through so many false identities to the point the media had nicknamed him the man of 1,000 faces, went for a Brazilian persona this time, using the fake identity of Luis Pablo Amorim. Marset settled himself and his family into a lavish mansion in the center of Santa Cruz, anything but discreet. He began making attempts to integrate into Bolivian high society, while of course also pouring money into football. Marset again picked a second division team as the target for his infiltration, with Leones del Torno the newest club to receive a big-time narco cash injection. The club received a new training ground and a former Bolivian national team player as their coach, all of which was funded by Marset's cocaine millions. With its influence successfully bought, Marset's next move was to of course insert himself into the team. Given Marset has distinctive tattoos, many of those who saw him play for his new club spotted the uncanny resemblance between their new number 23 and the wanted drug lord. But Marset was somehow able to dodge being outed and even appeared in games aired on local TV. Once again, his skills on the pitch were a complete detriment to his team, but nobody dared complain, with Marset covering all of the team's expenses, funding new signings, and again, paying his teammates large bonuses, all of which was funded by his criminal activities. It was remarkable how open Marset was, given that there were literally hundreds of police officers and investigators working to try and hunt him down. But here he was, playing professional football like he didn't have a care in the world. Marset's confidence to operate so openly, despite the chance he'd be recognized, was bolstered by his belief that if push came to shove and he was recognized, he could simply just bribe his way out of trouble. But just like his foray into Paraguayan football, there was always going to be an expiration date on his professional football fantasy. It lasted for the better part of half a year, but in May 2023, the Paraguayan investigators had finally traced Marset and they were ready to pounce. In collaboration with Bolivian police, they launched Operation Leon 23, named after Marset's team name and his new shirt number. With a staggering 3,000 Bolivian police mobilized and 158 checkpoints set up across Santa Cruz, they were ready to raid his mansion, and they felt certain that this time the King of the South would finally be theirs. But as the masses of police breached Marset's luxury home, the truth quickly smacked them hard in the face. He was already gone. Marset had again been tipped off just hours prior to the raid, and it's alleged that some of Marset's goons found officers tasked with watching the property prior to the raid and tortured them. With thousands of officers and checkpoints all across the city, the police remained confident that they would find him. But as they raided his properties and seized his cars, recovering a staggering $27 million worth of assets in the process, the one thing that they desperately wanted, Sebastián Marset, was nowhere to be found. As punishment for being bankrolled by a criminal drug lord, Leones del Torno was suspended by the Bolivian Football Federation, with charges brought against club leadership, and several of Marset's associates were arrested. Marset, on the other hand, got away scot-free and again decided to rub it in the police's face, contacting a prominent Santa Cruz lawyer to send her a video message in which he thanked the director of the Bolivian anti-narcotics police for tipping him off about the impending raid. But he wasn't done there. Marset decided to take the piss even more by arranging a secret television interview with a Uruguayan journalist who took 2 helicopter rides to a secluded mansion somewhere in the Paraguayan jungle just to meet Marset for the interview. In their interview, Marset can be seen looking smug, wearing a nice Louis Vuitton jumper and a gold watch, while speaking of his complete confidence that he will continue to avoid capture. At the time of making this video, Sebastián Marset is remarkably still a free man. He has police from Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and the US all working to capture him, and yet as of now, he is still out there, perhaps even audaciously plotting his way back into football. The net does seem to be slowly closing in, with his wife captured at Madrid airport on a fake passport in late 2024, but the King of the South himself has shown multiple times that he is extraordinarily adept at avoiding justice. So the next time you're watching a low-level football match, keep an eye out. If you spot a heavily tattooed, painfully slow South American midfielder spraying passes into the stands, you could just be watching Sebastián Marset's latest attempt at living out his childhood dream with his ill-gotten gains. The end. Thanks for watching the video. Please drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, and I'm going to try and get more active on this channel, so stay tuned for more videos just like this in the future. As always, check out my other channels linked in the description below, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.